Thanks for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zeidan is out after losing a no-confidence vote by lawmakers. The loss of a North Korean ship laden with stolen crude is the final blow to his credibility with Parliament. Also, in South Sudan, rebel hopes that 4 top political figures would be released by Juba before the resumption of peace talks are dashed as their treason trial begins. And a former friend of South African track star Oscar Pistorius tells the judge in his murder trial that he witnessed the Olympian's love for guns. First up, Libya's Prime Minister has been forced out by lawmakers after a North Korean oil tanker laden with stolen crude managed to slip past Navy ships and escape out to sea. It was the final blow to Parliament's confidence in Ali Zeidan's ability to maintain a firm grip on the country as it struggles for stability. Michelle Harrison-Pless has more.
Defeated by a motion of no confidence, Libyan MPs on Tuesday ousted Prime Minister Ali Zeidan.
Today, the General National Congress made a decision to dismiss Prime Minister Ali Zeidan and assign Defence Minister Abdullah Al-Thani to run the government until we vote for a new Prime Minister.
Zeidan came to power in 2012 but had faced increasing opposition. He was kidnapped by armed men in October last year. Meanwhile, other attempts to unseat him had failed. His sacking came on the heels of a tense standoff between the government and powerful militias controlling a port in the country's east. The rebels had defied authorities by selling oil to a North Korean-flagged tanker. On Tuesday morning, it dodged a Navy blockade, making away with a reported 234,000 barrels of crude oil.
The tanker was secured and protected by rebel forces while in Libyan waters. And until it reached international waters, at which point the accompanying boats retreated back to port.
Es Sirer is one of 3 major ports held since August by rebels demanding an autonomous state and a greater share of national oil wealth.
In South Sudan, the streets around the Supreme Court in Juba were locked down by armed soldiers as the treason trial of 4 high-profile political opposition figures began on Tuesday. The accused have denied the charges, and rebels, led by former Vice President Riek Machar, had hoped the group would be released ahead of peace talks with President Salva Kiir's government, which are due to resume later this month. The trial comes 3 months after clashes between the troops loyal to ex-Vice President Riek Machar and those backing Kiir snowballed into conflict in which thousands have died. Journalist and author James Copnell tells us he believes the start of the trial doesn't bode well for peace talks.
It wasn't just the rebels. Lots of international countries, too, have put pressure on President Salva Kiir to release these men. I think there hasn't been a widespread international acceptance of the government's main charge that this was an attempted coup against President Salva Kiir at the beginning of this conflict. Now, the President in the past has said he could possibly give an amnesty to these 4 men, but only after a trial takes place. So in a sense, the fact that the court proceedings have started is a positive step, but it still doesn't meet the demands of the rebels. It doesn't meet the demands of some of South Sudan's neighbours and powerful countries like the US either. So it is another stumbling block, I think, in what are proving to be very difficult negotiations.
Now, you've just released a book, A Poisonous Thorn in Our Hearts, and you argue there that South Sudan and Sudan's futures are still very firmly linked. So what, in your opinion, is Khartoum's role in Juba's current crisis?
Well, look, in the first year or 2 after separation in 2011, the 2 countries were at war in all but name, supporting each other's rebel groups and waging economic warfare against each other, direct clashes too. Now, after that, their relationship got a lot better under threat of UN sanctions in particular. They signed an economic deal, many other agreements. And so at the beginning of this crisis, Sudan's president Salva Kiir came to South Sudan and he backed his South Sudanese counterpart. And that was quite a radical move, really. So Actually, it seemed like Sudan and South Sudan, or at least Juba and Khartoum, were on the same side for once. But I think there are signs that there is tensions emerging in that relationship. Sudan, in particular, is not keen that Ugandan troops are supporting South Sudanese President Salva Kiir. It's nervous about these Ugandan soldiers near its border. And I think there's a growing tension between Juba and Khartoum. That's something to watch very, very closely in the weeks and months to come.
James Copton there speaking to us a little earlier on. Now, a friend of Oscar Pistorius today told the court that the South African track star had a big love for guns. Darren Fresco said that he'd been with Pistorius on at least 2 occasions when he fired a gun in public. The Paralympic athlete denies murdering his girlfriend last Valentine's Day.
A testimony which painted Pistorius as a man with a big love for guns, living a fast and reckless life. The Paralympian's former friend Darren Fresco described 2 incidents to the courtroom in which he said Pistorius had opened fire in public places. In the first, he said the 27-year-old fired a shot at a traffic light following an altercation with police.
I was driving, the accused was in the passenger seat, and then without prior warning, he shot out the sunroof.
Did you inquire from him why? What was he doing after the shot was fired?
He just laughed about what had just happened.
Fresco said Pistorius opened fire for a second time months later in a crowded Johannesburg restaurant, minorly injuring another friend, and claimed the gold medalist asked him to take the blame.
Instantly, he had passed the weapon back to me under the table, and he said, "Please, there's too much media hype around me at the moment. Please, can you take the rap for it?"
Fresco is now the second witness to say he fired the gun from the car, which Pistorius denies. However, Darren Fresco's account appeared to be undermined by the defence. He responded to a number of questions saying he didn't remember, and also said he'd followed the case on Twitter, which witnesses shouldn't do. After vomiting and retching through the day before's graphic pathology report, Pistorius seemed much more composed on Tuesday, watching his former friend closely and taking notes.
Look at some other news now. At least 6 people have been killed after torrential rains caused heavy flooding in the northern part of South African province Mpumalanga. A 69-year-old woman is also missing after being swept away when the Bella Bella Dam overflowed over the weekend. Disaster centres in the province are on high alert as more wet weather is expected there and in other parts of the country this week. French telecoms company Orange has pulled its advertising with the Ugandan tabloid that last month published the names of 200 people it claimed were gay. The Red Pepper newspaper ran the piece after President Yoweri Museveni signed a homophobic bill into law that called for homosexuals to be jailed for life. On Tuesday, Ugandan gay rights activists and politicians filed a court challenge to the new legislation, arguing that it violates the constitutional right to privacy. At least 22 people were killed in Egypt when a bus collided with a pickup truck in the Uyun Musa area in Suez. 50 people were on the bus when the accident happened. Some witnesses have blamed the fatal crash on a lack of proper lighting on the road. Now, last night, audiences here in Paris rocked out to the sound of Africa as big names from across the continent staged a concert in support of Central African Republic. Youssou N'Dour and Idil Mamba were amongst those singing for peace.
A month ago, Senegalese musician Youssou N'Dour and Central African singer Idil Mamba had joined voices for One Africa, a Muslim and a Christian together for the Central African Republic. Idil Mamba was in Paris on Monday. She came to take part in a solidarity concert for the Central African Republic.
I found this initiative very moving because I come from this country, which has been going through a very difficult period for a year now. I just had to contribute.
In a concert hall at the heart of the French capital, she joined Youssou N'Dour to say reconciliation was possible beyond religions. There were many performers from Africa in the concert. Lokwa Kanza, Ray Lema, Bonga. All the revenues from this event will go to the construction of Lingatere in Bangui, a cultural center which hopes to play a major role for restoring peace in the Central African Republic.
The absence of dialogue between the communities has created hatred and division. We must take initiatives which are both entertaining and at the same time make them forget their anxieties and their hatred so that reconciliation is possible.
Performers from Lingatere close the evening. If everything goes well, they will soon start their caravan for peace on the roads of the Central African Republic.
That wraps up African News for me. I will be back, though, with more tomorrow. Join us then if you can. Take care. Short break and more news and headlines from around the world.